Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Monday. Hope you're doing very, very well. It is extremely warm in the UK, 32 degrees. There will be people rolling their eyes somewhere going, 32 degrees.
We have switched climates. It is rainy over here and pretty calm, like 19 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius.
Is Toronto weather very much like East Coast weather, like you'd have in like Philadelphia or New York?
If there was a year to describe global warming, it could be this. Toronto's typically very sticky, humid, very hot in the summer, and then it switches and it becomes very, very cold. And, but the weather doesn't change on a dime. Like if it's East Coast or West Coast, like in Vancouver, a coastal city, rain can come and go within the hour. Yeah. That's not Toronto. Toronto's like pretty steady Eddie. But this summer's been horrible. From a Canadian perspective, it's been freaking cold.
Sorry, George.
Same in the UK, to be fair, until like the last week or so.
Yeah, and until yesterday. It was very warm at the Emirates. Bhavs and I were both at the ground, but we'll certainly get into that. Thank you for being here. Make sure you gently caress the like button if you're on YouTube. We want to talk, obviously, the game yesterday against Lyon. We want to talk Calafiori. We want to talk Martinelli. We want to talk loads of stuff, so make sure you're locked in. And yeah, we'll just jump right into it. Bhavs and I were both at the game yesterday, which we're very lucky to be there. You were sat behind the bench?
I was sat behind the Lyon bench. Very good seats. Very good seats. And for the prices are insane.
Yeah, I was at club level. Very nice, I will say.
Club level was nice. They've upgraded it nicely. I wouldn't say it's bougie. I think that's just a slightly better experience.
Yeah, it's basically you don't have to queue for the toilets. That's probably the main.
Yeah, you get a match day program in the end.
Is it so? Like how the Emirates has that that lip? Like you've got the lower stadium, and then there's like that one section. Is that club level?
Yeah, below the sort of the director's level, essentially.
And then above that's the box. The boxes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'll say there? If you go to any American stadiums, our club level, so our higher level, is normal in America.
Yes.
As in all these options that you get at club level, if you walk in American stadiums, you just access to everyone.
Yes.
So we just end up paying it for no reason.
Yeah.
That's literally it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Because even the food at club level is insanely expensive.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah,
you know what's probably an easy thing to ask for both of you guys? Because you guys had different perspectives. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer being seated behind the bench lower, basically pitch at ground level, or do you prefer sitting higher up? Like, is your mind going tactical as you're going, or do you want to be in the thick of the game?
Depends on how you want to watch the game. Yeah, it depends on how you watch. So certain games, if you want to go and get absolutely tipsy and drunk, just anywhere in the ground will do.
For sure.
But the lower the better. Because you can just see little glimpses here and there, and that's about it. But you do have to stand up quite a lot. Because when you're sat behind the bench, you can't stand up the whole time. So you have to keep sitting down, standing up, standing up. Whereas if you're a bit higher up, lower tier, you can stand up the whole time. Whereas upper tier, it's a lot easier to just digest the game, watch it properly, and know exactly what's happening. Whereas lower tier, you'll miss a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's I wish someone could do like a meta-analysis of like what people on TV versus in the ground, and then within the ground where they're sat. Feeling. What people take away from the game, because I imagine it skews the analysis. I was thinking about this today, like, we like sort of mock Roy Keane and that sort of like everything's physical type analysis, right? It kind of makes sense if you think about his experience of football. It is experiential. It's within it. It's battling. It's dueling. It's physical. That's his experience of football. So that's the way he's going to view it. Whereas if you only ever watch games on a screen, naturally you view it as a more tactical. You're looking at the shape, you're looking at the build-up, you're looking at those sorts of things, and it probably does skew the analysis. And I think going to the games, you are reminded how much it is. I know people at home are probably saying this isn't very hot, but like 28 degree heat, direct sunlight, it's a physical battle, the duels, they're competing, there's sweat, blood and tears. Whenever I go to the game, I'm always like, I need to remember that when I'm analysing, because it is an aspect of the game. And I think sometimes, certainly I'm guilty of getting too kind of like, the reason the game played out like that was because of these tactical elements, rather than maybe considering maybe they were tired. Like it can happen.
As Ty once said, you must not forget it's raining.
Yeah, exactly. And no, these things do affect it.
It is important.
100%.
I think the amount of times I've gone to a game and I've thought like an opinion, and I've come out and it's the complete opposite in the general consensus of the fan base, because they haven't seen what I've seen or vice versa. So yeah, you're right. It is very different. It's a mad experience.
It's super interesting, and you just get a different vibe. Obviously, you kind of hear different things, and also obviously from the camera perspective, you only see what
depends on where you sit as well.
Shows you. And actually, that's coming on to the game. It's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because let's just talk about the game sort of overall first. Arsenal 2, Lyon 0. Nice to see Aidan McNiles again. Number 98. Why is he 98? Oh, his year of birth. I've just clocked that. There you go.
Ooh, might
maybe.
be, yeah.
But yeah, it was a good game. Obviously won the Emirates Cup. Crucial win, and everyone really cared. Martin Odegaard held it in the air for about 3 seconds.
71% field goal.
That's all that matters. So it's interesting. We'll get into different aspects of it. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was I was so impressed yesterday. I think sometimes against these sorts of opposition, and George, I'll come to you first. I think sometimes against, not to disrespect Lyon, but non-Premier League, maybe slightly lower tier opposition, you get to see what the ideas are really clearly. And I think sometimes what happens is in pre-season games, people go, oh, it's only against Lyon, or it's only against the sort of a lower tier opposition. But what I always find interesting is if you flip that round, you go, well, then you're able to see what we're really trying to do without impediment, without sort of teams really sort of coming up against us. That first 20, 30 minutes, if you want to look at Arsenal's principles, go and watch that, because that's an unimpeded sense of what we're trying to do. And I was so impressed, especially in those first 20, 30 minutes, by the press, the build-up, the execution. The thing that really stood out to me, and something I maybe hadn't noticed because, again, sort of we're talking about sort of the angle you view the game from, and what you can't see on TV, is the anticipation. We are certainly out of possession. We're trying to build this sense that Arsenal are one of the best teams out of possession in the world. I think one of them is the anticipation, especially someone like a Ben White. We're always that half a second, a split second in there before the opposition. It's those little right. For example, the press is coming over to the right. We sort of angled them over. They're trying to find the left winger, but Ben White's already spotted it and he's already run. You can't see that on the TV, but he's already in his sprint before the left winger can get to it. Same on the other side with Martinelli. Same on the inside with Partey and stuff. And the activity. I think about that Carlos Cuesta thing on All or Nothing.
The level of activity.
The level of activity is so good, and that was like my real takeaway from that game is the off the ball. We looked incredible in possession, right, George? But off the ball, seeing how good we are unimpeded, it's so impressive.
I think like when you talk about out of possession work, right? You can coach somebody to recognize triggers. You can coach a player to say, listen, this is our plan. If you do this, you do that. Part of the issue is when you're in the moment and the game is going 100 miles per hour, and in the meanwhile, you're checking your blind side. You've got to make sure that when you go, your partner is coming. There is a level of trust. And as stupid as it is, you trust fall every time you jump. So what I mean by that is every time that you get out of your block, you are trusting you're being supported. If you don't, you're being left to dry. So a lot of times when we see maybe even the Thomas Partey in a midfield, when he jumps and he's not coming back, half of that, okay, maybe he jumps poorly, but also the team needs to support him. And we are the most supportive team in the world. That's what makes us the best out of possession team in the world. And it's a lot of times why when I start to talk about additions to the team environment, they have to have that collective. And especially out of possession, because it's not just a skill that you need to learn in terms of the structure. It's not just a football technique. I mean, Ben White has brilliant anticipation, don't get me wrong. But part of the thing is, like you said, Martinelli is squeezing at the same time while Declan is squeezing at the top of the anchor. Meanwhile, you've still got Saliba that is backing up Ben White, replacing him, and Gabriel shifting over. And that coordination at the same time is trust, because nobody is telling us a secret sauce. I'm guaranteeing you right now, I think I've told you guys, and I've told the pod this, a story previously in my coaching. I tried to teach distances with a really young U13, U14 team by tying a thread of yarn to everybody's hips in the back line. And I would knock the ball to different areas of the pitch. And I said, I want you to defend. The reason I did that is yarn is not very strong. It is strong enough to be taught, but it will break if you don't support. So the idea was I knocked it to the right and the right back would jump. If the center back or the right center back didn't jump with him, the yarn snapped. I would stop the session and say, okay, what happened? Some people just said, get stronger yarn. And, but the idea was, okay, if you don't support him, your chain breaks. Yeah. This was my communication point. So instead of telling them, I showed them with that. Now, if the yarn is loose, it means A, your distances are okay. You're free to move. And that's really important because you being free to move means that you can then turn that possession into valuable possession. Now, if the yarn is taut and your distances are too tight, you can't move. So not only can you not defend, but now you can't transition that attack effectively. So I think those principles are what makes our team so brilliant. The rope, so to speak, is not taut. It's always loose, but it's always within 5 yards of each other, and you can just see that collective willingness to support each other.
100%. I think it's so well said, and I think specifically on a Ben White example, if he's jumping up to the left wing back or whatever it might be for Lyon, right? He's only doing that because he knows behind him is some of the best jewelers in the world, some of the best over-the-shoulder jewelers in the world. He also knows that Kai Havertz is supporting the ball across the box. He knows Martin Odegaard is pressing the man, and he knows the ball back to the goalkeeper is going to be supported, and the ball into the midfield is supported. He can only do that, as you say, if he's supported by the rest of the team. He can only be active out of position and jump that early if he is supported. I think you're so right. Perhaps the out of position stuff is so impressive. It's so impressive. But I also thought we were really impressive in possession yesterday. And again, it's, you could look at it, it's just Lyon. But for me, we're seeing what our players can do unimpeded, right? And I thought specifically Partey and Zinchenko both showed, I know we want to come on to Zinchenko from a sort of structural perspective in just a second, but just from a sort of individual perspective, just to speak on those two players, because I thought they both showed in that game what they still can be for us. And what happens is we focus on the limitations of the players, and they do have limitations, and there's certain aspects of it. Is Partey fully up to speed? Is he getting there? These are all questions that we'll answer as we go along, right? But they both showed us, I think, what they still can do, the qualities they still have, and why they're still here. They're not here for no reason.
No, I totally agree. And in the case of Zinchenko, I think he's got a case to go for it as well, because he's got a new left back coming in Ricardo Calafiori. So he's got now to really fight for his position. Last year, Kivior wasn't actually a left back, and Tomiyasu wasn't even fit either. So with Timber injured, he didn't have that level of competition. But now he's got that there. You can see that he's playing with something to play for, and you can see the quality straight away. And it's always funny to see Arsenal fans reminded of his passing quality, because we know it's always there. And he's had a few defensive moments here and there, but I always think it does get overstated at times. He's got a few defensive issues, but the amount of times fans talk about him as if he's Andre Santos, and you can't rely upon him whatsoever. He's not a banter player. He's a very high quality player, and if he was to leave Arsenal and go to another club, I think he'd be a star player there as well. Maybe he's not a starter for Arsenal guaranteed anymore, but that just shows how far the team we've progressed, because this is a guy who used to play for Man City, an important role for Man City when he used to win title after title. So I think he's become I wouldn't say he was ever overrated, but he's gone very underrated now in the fan base because of his quality. I don't think he's going to be here for the long term future, but in terms of this year, I think I can see him having a very important role, and even coaching someone like Miles maybe into the role going into the future. But Thomas Partey, I'd say rhythm. I see rhythm now. I see a player that's fully in flow, and he takes time. We've seen it in the past when he comes up from an injury or he's not been in the team for a while. It takes time for him to adapt as well. But you put him next to Declan Rice, and I think anyone look better. If you put me next to Declan Rice, I'm not quite Thomas Partey, but I do decent, So I think just seeing the team back to full strength, seeing that 11 start, because I think that's 11 that starts against Wolves as well, is just nice. I see a team now fully in sync. I see Mikel Arteta's brain in this team. Everyone's got, and I think sometimes people forget how important it is to have continuity. As a manager, you talk about new signings and big changes, but I remember when Liverpool won the league in 1920, they made one signing the whole summer, and that was Adrian. But without that, they were just so used to playing on the Jurgen Klopp, they knew exactly where to be, exactly how to play with the ball. I now see a team that's fully Mikel Arteta's team, in sync with his ideas, knowing what to do. And it's just so exciting, when you watch Arsenal play, I get a different level of dopamine. It's not from transfers, it's not from rumours, it's not from here we go Bombers, it's from watching Arsenal play, and that's how it should always be.
You're bang on. I think that should be, that should be the peak of being a fan, is watching your team play, and how good we are. Yeah, I think Zinchenko, to his credit, and I was thinking this yesterday, and we'll now sort of come on to maybe the differences he's showing in possession, which maybe are helping him and helping this performance. If you'd said to me at the end of last season, probably Zinchenko starts against Wolves, are we all in agreement? Probably. And I'd be like, all right, fine. I would have been shocked, and obviously part of that is Tomiyasu's injury. Obviously part of that is Timber's injury, so on and so forth. And we've, but considering we've also signed someone who can play in that position, we'll come on to Calafiori in a second. But I think it's probably just that touch too early, not through any fault of his own, but just because of when we signed him. And I'm okay with Zinchenko being in that. It speaks to him, and it speaks to his credit. you don't change number if you're not going to stick around. And I think it's about maximising what we have, and part of that is reducing the positions in which he can cause us issues. And I think Bhavs, you spoke well about it there in terms of because the likes of Saliba and Gabriel and Ben White make so few mistakes. Because Zinchenko does have a couple in him, I think they can get a little bit over-indexed as this is a 9 out of 10 problem, when actually it's like a 2 or 3 out of 10 problem, but it hurts us so much because we make so few other mistakes, or we see it so much. But George, he's got a slightly new role, which I know you want to talk about.
Yeah, there's a couple things here, right? In terms of the Zinchenko story, because I think everybody talks about extremes on X, period. So let's not go to like the extreme narrative of each side. The one thing with Zinchenko is I do think there was a marketed improvement in his technical execution yesterday and has been all preseason.
Some of those switches to Saka were really nice.
Yeah, but also just the messaging, the purpose, the incision between the lines. Okay, last season it wasn't just the defensive mistakes. I felt technically he was loose. I felt technically in build-up there was times that he panicked, and there were times that he wasn't as assured. And I'll get into like the little structure that maybe have given him, but I think the number change, the fact he's changed agents, there is a summer of rebirth in Zinchenko.
He's a big fan of 5 things.
Well, seriously,
it's watching Bhavs. It's having Cedric Suarez's number. That's what's really
you stole my punchline. That is what I was ending with. Forget the structure. He knew Bhavs' 5. Everything knows about 5 things. But you know what? Look, I do have a feeling that he has thought long and hard about his position in world football. I do think that, and I think that because he's changed agents. I think that it was a shock that nobody in world football gave him serious interest. I do believe, regardless of how influential he was yesterday, Arsenal put him up for sale, and he did not receive the interest that maybe both he thought he would, but also Arsenal thought that he would. And I think that him changing agents was a look to, okay, I need to reset where I am. I'm too comfortable within the team, and I don't want to have a repeat of Manchester City, where I'm part of a title-winning team having not played significant minutes. The whole point for him individually was to become the mainstay. I'm talking from Zinchenko's perspective, right? Then he changes number, okay? He goes, and to him, it's a level of rebirth. And to us, we're rediscovering an asset here. Because the change that we've noticed in structure is now when we build, Gabriel no longer is the one stepping out through the left channel. He's being pushed wide, defending the channel, and Zinchenko, or our high-touch pivot with Jorginho, will drop from higher up into the back line. Whereas previously, Zinchenko would start at left back, and when we invert to left back, he is stepping into midfield. Zinchenko stepping back into the back line. That's a very important difference that people, I don't think, have highlighted enough, because what it does is it gives him that extra 5 yards. The panic that we saw last year was this idea, how do I break a block when there's so many people blocking the middle, right? And so when he's going into an already crowded area, it's a Zinchenko that, for me, one of his worst qualities is I think he's really emotional. And I think that temperature of a game can affect him. Take him out of the fire, get him a little bit deeper where you can see more of the game in front of him and he can start to dictate. That is where he's comfortable because he's no longer rushed. And if you give Zinchenko time, he will kill you. That is something that no one can take away from Zinchenko. And we're giving him more time. We're asking him to lead up in left center back. We're asking small tweaks in terms of even when we're defending out of possession. We're noticing not only our winger be a lot more conservative and more narrow in our press, what we're seeing is we're seeing the entire team shift over to help that side. Now, there's still moments I felt like Lyon had isolated Zinchenko 1v1, and you're never going to eradicate that. If he stood up 1v1, it's never going to be something that he's a superstar with. But I think this type of Zinchenko, with his level of purpose on the pass and his incision and what he felt like he had time to do, is a different level asset. And when you start to look at the pivot, I want to ask you guys, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Thomas Partey wasn't the one receiving in the first phase between that pivot. They staggered the pivot. So simply, they just told Partey, act as an 8, go a little bit higher. We're going to slot Zinchenko, who is going to be the one receiving in the middle between the center backs and also stepping into midfield. He was the anchor. If you really want to be specific, he was the lone anchor, and it was Partey who was a little bit higher up. For me, ultimately, Zinchenko lost his voice last season. You had Martin Odegaard change position, who became more of a middle third tempo person. You had Jorginho introduced into the 11, not Thomas Partey, another high touch lone anchor. So now you've got two people who came into your zone where previously you were the teacher. Now you've got TAs that are doing your work, and you're sitting there saying, okay, what's left for me to do? And I'm panicking because I'm losing my focus. I'm losing my influence on the team, and I'm doing too much to regain it. And that's what I felt all of last season. And this season, by doing these tweaks, I think we're seeing an individually more focused Zinchenko, for sure. I think you have to attribute that to him because I think the actual execution technically is different. So I need to praise that. But I also think the structure, taking him out of arriving into the pivot in midfield and dropping into the back line to give him the time to execute, is equally something that we've, to be fair, been calling of Mikel to tweak his structure and support players more a lot. And I just think this is one of the clearest examples all preseason that we saw.
Absolutely. And the only thing I'd add to that, because I think it's really well said, is if you look at the way Arsenal press and in terms of the way they angle the press, it's clearly trying to push us over to the right with our dual winners, with our jumpers, with our anticipators. This is the sort of left versus right thing that we've spoken about before, George. And it means that Zinchenko isn't asked to do so much. But when it does go over to that side, again, in terms of supporting him, Martinelli, I should praise his out-of-possession work. There was a moment in the game yesterday where I think he lost it, but then he went back and won it. And the crowd loves that. They love it when a player loses it and they run back and straight away and get it. And then Martinelli went down with an injury, but it was really important. But it means that he's supported. He's never doubled up on or certainly singled out in that way. But also what I like as well is, and part of it is you're sort of looking for that asymmetry and asking yourself why. But he never jumps in the way that Ben White does. I don't think Mikel asks him to. He doesn't ask him to jump up and find himself 1v1 square on because he's going to get knocked around. He's supported behind him with Gabriel, with Martinelli and stuff, and I think it's really key. Let's move forward from Zinchenko because he was taken off for a man called Ricardo Calafiori, who came on for 29 minutes of the greatest 29 minutes of the Emirates era, I'd say. Maybe the greatest defender ever? Maybe the greatest ever Emirates performance, possibly? No, he looked good. I mean, I'll start. I think he's a little bit busier than maybe I expected him to be. I think I expected him, especially at left back. I think he was a little bit sort of hurried and stuff. I have to say I was watching him from behind, so I could have had a different perspective. He never got caught out or anything. I think he has the capacity to do that, but I wonder if not on his debut, he might be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more laid back, and he's trying to make an impact, which I completely get. The crowd were loving it; they were enjoying. They were every touch, everything he did, which was supported and praised. That Mikel spoke about after the game, which I think is really important. For players to feel loved. There was a massive ovation for him. It's really, really lovely to see. I think once he went to left centre back, though, we started to see a little bit more of maybe what we purchased and what we think we're getting with Calafiori, which is that tempo setter, which is someone who looked really secure and composed, shuffling across really nicely, supporting Miles Lewis-Skelly as well. He's in an unfamiliar back four with himself. I think it was Kivior and Miles, and I think he looked really, really good. A couple of nice moments of tempo setting and build up and control. Overall, as I say, I think he'll chill out a little bit. But Bhavs, a really, really good debut and lots to praise.
Yeah, very solid. As you said, he looks very aggressive. I like that. And we know how it is, how important it is for Mikel Arteta to be aggressive off the ball and to be able to anticipate. And I definitely think it's a part of his debut and he wants to go impress the fans. It's the Emirates Stadium. It's nice and sunny. Just go out and make a sign, especially after that performance with Zinchenko, He'll realise that he's also got a battle there as well. It's not like he's got no left back whatsoever to fight off, so he has to go and make a statement. And he was trying to do it with his jewels straight away. And we know how Arsenal fans love jewels and Mikel Arteta loves his jewels, so that's one of the best ways to make impressions straight away. But yeah, I see a player that he's trying to, show that he's here to take over, show that he's here to mean business. And I don't think he'll be a starter straight away. In certain games, he definitely will be. But I just think when Timber returns as well, how it's going to rotate, because that's where I'm very intrigued to see Timber, Calafiori, Zinchenko, and obviously you've got Kivior as well, but he's playing a lot of games as right centre back. There's a lot of things at their defence. There's a lot of questions I want to see answered as well, and I think we'll see them in the first few months of the season, because we're going to have to rotate quite a lot. Let's not forget we've also got extra 2 Champions League group stage games as well because of the new format. So Mikel Arteta is going to have to rotate better than ever before. But in Calafiori's own performance, I was impressed, but I think there's more to see. And I think the more we see him start, more his chart as well, which I'm sure you heard yesterday, that he's going to get better and better and better. Yeah, there you go. We might have to start again.
Yeah, and Tomiyasu as well to return as well. So it's further competition and lots to have a look at in terms of the rotations. I think It's going to be fascinating to see how he's deployed. And I think the real thing, George, that I think we've got is a tactical weapon. I know we've spoken about this before, but that was really the sense that I got. There was a moment where he sort of stepped out and you could see that the space was open up in front of him and he kind of wanted to carry, but he actually turned around and went back. I think we are going to see a little bit more conservatism than maybe we've seen, on the clips and stuff, and the very, very best of Calafiori from Bologna. But when he has that space to carry, when we've created that space to carry, and we talk about supporting him, whether it's through your high and wide winger, whether it's through a midfielder in the half space or wherever it might be, however we create that space and sort of create the conditions for him to thrive. I'm really looking forward to seeing how we use that, who steps in, and sort of how that all works. But yeah, your thoughts on Calafiori's debut yesterday?
Yeah, it was. There were some good moments. There were some moments that I think he's still learning the system. That's really clear. I think we said it before on the rewatch. He is a stallion that we will have to tame. He is somebody that is gonna want to press forward at every opportunity. And the one thing that I love about Calafiori is his
hair.
Well, and the fact that I look alike. I don't know why that's happened.
Just for clarity, guys.
I really don't. But
So you're not brothers?
No, absolutely not.
Oh wow,
cousins! Come on, mate.
Yeah. I see.
The thing with Calafiori that I love though is that I don't think that he lets the game dictate his actions. For him, if the game is not going how it's supposed to go, he will take it into his own hands and create something. That could be a moment, that could be a tackle, it could be a carry, it could be something as simple as, okay, you move there. What I loved is he was trying to tell people to move who has barely been there beyond a week. And I understand that it was a youngster in Miles Lewis-Skelly, but he took ownership of the back line in a back line where, for me, in theory, Kivior is the more senior player. And Kivior actually played really well.
It's older, isn't he, Kivior?
I think maybe a year. Maybe a year. It's not a big difference if it is.
Kivior's 24, yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I felt like that was really important. And the one thing that I liked is less about the carries, but did you see how often he squeezed high? Like, that support for our left wing wasn't there. It just simply wasn't. Like, we weren't engaging on the left high. The right engaged high, the left engaged deep, because we had an issue at left back that didn't allow us to engage high. So it was a very lopsided press last year. I don't feel like that's going to be the case. And, when you look at Zinchenko, even when he was playing that position, he was doing the same thing. It was very high in terms of where out of possession he was pressed. If he was going to lose a duel, it was lost high up the pitch, not behind. That was the big difference that I saw from our left back out of possession, which excited me.
I think that's bang on, and I think it's kind of underpinned by, when I'm looking at the guys who are coming to the team, Miles, in different ways, Miles, Ethan, Marino, Calafiori, like in different ways or whatever, there's this attitude about them. There's a kind of a je ne sais quoi. There's something about all these guys, especially behind the ball. And I think we're seeing something in a Mikel signing where we're going like, this is a mental profile. This is what Mikel likes, someone who isn't afraid. There was a moment sort of near the end where Calafiori was berating Kivior for something. He was going, "What are you doing?" He was like, he had his arms out. He was talking to him about something. And I was like, I love that. I love someone who's going to come and who's going to challenge. We had that article from Mikel, which we haven't actually discussed. Maybe we could come to it at some point during the pod, sorry. About sort of Mikel's methods and so on and so forth, about the pickpocketing on the Athletic. If you haven't read it, it's a good read. But one of the things he said was, one of the things in the article was Georgsson, who I think was our old set-piece coach who's now at Manchester United, was saying that he thinks certainly that Mikel basically chose his coaching staff on the basis that they aren't yes man. They aren't people who are just going to say yes to Mikel, that there was fiery conversations, but it's always with the end goal of having the best idea, the best execution, the best for Arsenal. And I think that, for me, that kind of is translating into what I'm seeing in terms of the recruitment, or the players that are coming into the team and succeeding in the team are players who are willing to show their personality straight away. And I think it also explains certainly maybe players who are slightly being phased out, maybe someone like a Kivior. And this is one of my things with Kivior. It's not a question mark about the ability or can you play for Mikel. I think he can, but can he show his personality? And that's what I love about Kivior so much, is that he from day one, he's coming in, he's going, right, let's do it. I love it.
Yeah, and you know what? I just think for me, I also did feel that Kivior did a really good job at right center back. I mean, he's been doing a brilliant. Yeah, he's been doing a brilliant job all preseason. What I find is last year there were times when the squad didn't feel important. I'm not seeing that in the early stages of preseason, and I'd like that to continue. And I mean, that's probably one of my. If you could tell me, George, what's one of the best things that you've learned about preseason? I feel the squad feels important, and I don't think I could say that last year. Like, Kivior is playing with confidence. Not just that he's coming in as a right center back, he's actually throwing personality on it. He's actually looked like a very important member that if Calafiori is going to be the brazen, he will take the reserved role. But not just act reserved, he was really, really smart in terms of when he was releasing, complementing that right-hand side. And I think doing what we needed. If Calafiori is going to bomb, we need somebody to stay. You can't have both people doing the same thing. And he understood that brilliantly. Zinchenko is coming in, doing probably one of his best performances that I've seen in a while, who is effectively, in many people's mind, third choice behind potentially Calafiori or Timber. And he's performing like that. Brilliant. I know we mentioned it briefly. Thomas Partey has looked the best he's looked for me in a while, particularly in possession in the game against Lyon. We're rediscovering players. And I think Reece Nelson is potentially the story of preseason in terms of his effectiveness, at least from the US tour, probably one of our best players there. Yeah. So I think in general, across the squad, we can look at and start to gain confidence that people who maybe didn't have a voice are starting to be confident with having one.
100%. And I think, for Kivior, developing that variability is so key. I think Mikel spoke in the press conference after the game. He's basically saying, I think he was sort of asked a question about versatility.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, we've got so many good players that I'm telling you, they're all saying to me, I can play there, I can play there, I can play there.
Yeah.
Because they know it's going to get them minutes. They are all aware that the more versatility they have, the more positions they can play, the more likely they're going to get minutes. It's basic maths. And I think someone like a Kivior, there's an opportunity here. Saliba can't play every single minute. Mikel said it himself. And, okay, we're sat here, before the season saying maybe, maybe not. But, there is a world where maybe Kivior becomes that sort of second choice for Saliba. We didn't know about Calafiori 2 months ago. We didn't know about Timber last year. Things change very quickly. So the opportunity is there for him, I do think.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think there's a good chance that this year we see a lot of rotation. Because you can see it from pre-season that it's not like a set team. Remember a couple of years ago, was it 22, 23, where he kind of played the same exact team again and again and again in pre-season? It's not the case now. He's got exact subs to call on, and also the youngsters. Miles and Ethan are going to be part of the first team this season. That is almost 2 new signings here and there. Because of the profiles they have and the quality they have and how much they're going to develop as well. And also the amount of time Mikel spent with some of these players now. Is they're reaching levels now that we haven't seen before, and they're all going to get better and better. Bukayo, as an example, Kai again, looking very threatening, and Martin Odegaard. What a player Martin Odegaard is!
Martin Odegaard was terrific.
I do not how people doubt him any day. Yeah, he's amazing. He's sensational.
He's unbelievable. Yeah, loads of positives on the game. Set Piece FC returned, of course. We can talk about that maybe another day. Obviously, lots of great stuff in possession.
How many assists do you reckon Rice is going to get from corners this year?
8, 6 to 8, something like that.
Could you imagine double figures?
From that side, it's crazy. Do you know what? It's so good, and also I love that he takes his time over the corners to give us some time. So he calms the game down a little bit, so we can get that time to sort of set ourselves. I want to talk another player. I want to talk Martinelli. In the stadium, there's a number of moments where Martinelli sort of had his player isolated. My feeling around Martinelli right now is, if he can do a couple of things, the sky's the limit for him in terms of the positions he's picking up, in terms of the sort of the dynamics of the team, where we have the sort of the control and the touches on the right hand side, and then the stretch and the more shot takers on the left hand side, or however you want to sort of define it, with Havertz on that side as well. I'm looking at Martinelli and I just feel it's very unfair to compare him, but the way Saka is able to stop and start his man, go inside and outside, if Martinelli can develop even a little bit more of that, I think it's genuinely curtains for the Premier League. Seriously. And by the way, Martinelli's still 22. This is natural. This is natural development. We're comparing him to Bukayo Saka, which isn't fair. I also feel that specifically his weak foot at the moment, his left side, is letting him down. I think he's so keen, or certainly was so keen in that game to cut back inside that it let him down a few times. I will say, I think the moment where Havertz plays him through, I've said this on X and people disagree with me, and that's fine. I think in that case, I felt he was so keen to get on his right that he lost the separation that he could have had on his left. But I'm not particularly interested in isolated incidents. I'm more talking about Martinelli as a whole, George, and I'll come to you. That if he can develop that ability, that stop and which we've seen in sort of ironically stops and starts, where he can stop you and then make you go again, create that separation from a standing start, get that left foot firing, and sort of I think was it the the Villa game a couple of seasons ago, he squeezed it into the near post. If he can sort of download that pack, to use internet speak, I think there's an explosion coming for him. And I think it can happen. It's just I think we might have to be patient.
I think the tough thing with Martinelli and the conversations around that is that people only remember you for your last game. And your last game was last season. And that for me is part of the problem. If you're going to sit there and talk about all the changes that we've made on the left-hand side, as well as what's evidently coming in terms of Mikel Moreno and the construction that's happened down that side, take away Martinelli, period, the left wing will be supported in a way that we didn't see last season. So what you saw last season cannot apply. In terms of the touchline role, in terms of the idea that our left wing would receive and basically be a recycler. Last year, he was a placeholder for being in lane 5 to receive the ball and then recycle. He wasn't asked really to attack the box. We said that our left 8 should be the one that was attacking the box, right? And I do feel that part of that conversation needs to be tied together. Part of it is individual. I think that there are moments that I think Martinelli, for example, especially in the Lyon game, there's a time when he breaks past and I think, he's through on goal and there's just a simple slip ball into Declan Rice to feed him into the box and he overhits it. I mean, Declan applauds the effort, but mate, there's no pressure there. Like that needs to be executed. That, that's not a difficult pass. That's on you. Like I can make all the structure comments in the world, but you do need to execute that action. That'll be part of his development. And I do think that Saka has destroyed Arsenal fans' understanding of efficiency.
Of wingers. Yeah.
Just period. I mean, the boy, think about when he started. He dominated the left back position, got asked to play in left central midfield against Manchester City, dominated that position, made every right decision, gets moved to right wing, has now become one of the best right wingers in the world. One thing you cannot say about Bukayo Saka, amongst many things, is that he makes the right decision every single time. And when you see somebody that doesn't make the right decision, it can lead to a little bit of questioning, because we've got this other reference that constantly does it. So then you sit there asking, why can't you? There's a bit of that. I think I can't get away from my opinion on the player. And my opinion on the player has always felt that there was a ceiling that would be capped as a winger. I still believe that. I believe that when you're talking about cutting in to his right foot and finding the bottom corner, that has never been something that, for me, Martinelli has excelled with. For me, what he's excelled with is finding space in the box. If I was to look at a career highlight reel of Martinelli, where he comes alive, it's centrally. And getting him in those central positions are key to unlocking him. If you want him to carry, to whip in a ball, to be more consistent in terms of crossing back post, to be more consistent on the break in terms of making sure that, he's cutting into his right foot and having the Thierry Henry finish, I don't think that'll ever be him. I mean, for me, he's best when he improvises. I look back, I forget who was it against, but do you guys remember that one floated ball from Tomiyasu who had played right back with Martinelli, who was a right winger? And I forget who it was against, but it was at the Emirates. Newcastle. Thank you. Floats it over the top, volley off the first touch. Like that instinctive finish is Martinelli. It's not him bursting over 60 yards and then trying to find a slotted far corner finish.
Yeah.
It's just not him. So I think you do need to ask questions of the player, but you also need to ask questions about who you platform and how you do it.
No, I agree, and it's trying to find a balance in the conversation. I wonder how much that Chelsea goal has slightly warped what we think Martinelli is, especially for the sort of the.
He's always done it, even at preseason when he first came in. He has a central run in him, no problem. Like he does have that. It's just I don't think that right now at left wing he's consistently making that run to the side of the box, not central.
I think that, it's about trying to find a balance. I think ultimately he's playing left wing at the minute. So for me, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, can he improve in these areas? And I also think he can. There was a number of moments yesterday I was going, take him on the outside, and he can do it. He's got that burst in him. But Bhavs, but then, you know, that has to be balanced, as you say, with the conversations around how he's being supported. Do you get the best out of him centrally? I would argue, in terms of the asset, Bhavs, like, okay, if the answer is moving him centrally, you then lose a lot of what you get from a Kai Havertz in that position if that's something we want to platform him. So I think at the minute, the left side makes the most sense, and therefore that's why I think it's worth having the conversation about what he is at left wing. And
can I ask a quick question on that? Who would you, if you had to bet your house based on what you've seen, give both of them the equal conditions, who is the more instinctive box finisher for you between Martinelli and Kai Havertz?
Of course, it's Martinelli. There's no question. But the point is, the centre forward isn't just the person for Arsenal, certainly, who is in the box finishing those chances. That, you know, if you look at what else Kai Havertz is doing, there's a lot of different conversations and they're very different profiles. But I think Bhavs, like, how basically, I suppose the overall question is balancing all of this. How do we get the most out of Martinelli? And yeah, what do you feel about
that? I don't know at this point, and I say that because to maximise Martinelli, I'm not sure if it goes towards Mikel's current style of play and how he's trying to platform the likes of Havertz and other players like that. And I think he's kind of become the sacrifice in that sake as well. And it might annoy some fans at the same time, but that's the reality. You know, we've always talked about Martinelli maybe playing as a centre forward in the future and having a future there. I've never seen Mikel really platform that and try to make an actual plan for the future and make a signing to go, okay, he's my long-term centre forward, I'm going to slowly mould you into that. I've always seen him as a left winger, kind of, I said not get shoehorned in there, but he's playing as a left winger, maybe not his best position at times, and maybe that's the one area he wants to address and make a big signing in. And we've talked about that. For me, it was the fact that he wanted to spend £60 million on Mykhailo Mudryk, a player who's coming from Ukraine. That would be a record signing, and that was when Martinelli was doing very well as well.
And he's also wanted to sign
forwards. He obviously wants a more natural. Yeah, he obviously wants to sign a more natural left winger. And that's not Martinelli's fault. I think you're right, he's better centrally. But maybe Mikel doesn't rate him to a level, or he doesn't quite offer Mikel exactly what he wants to send forward, so why he's not done that. And that's why I think there's a good chance that I don't see he get phased out of the team, but if we make a big signing as a forward, it will be a left winger first. And then Martinelli has a bit more trouble to compete with, and he has to improve his own game. And then it's down to Mikel to see how he uses him. Does he actually play him as a centre forward at times? Because we've seen it, and I think it was the last season, was it the year before that, where he kind of played against Sporting Lisbon and he started as a centre forward. I think it was when Jesus was injured and Trossard was injured as well, when he did alright. He did alright a few runs as well, but I've just never seen Mikel platform in that way. I've never seen an indication from Mikel that Martinelli's just long-term centre forward, and that's why I'm a bit concerned to see where he's going to be in the long-term future. But for now, I definitely think he can improve and earn a few little bits and bobs until we maybe sign a winger.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe this season, sort of the immediate short-term future. I think, Georgie, it is about trying to get Martinelli more centrally. It's about trying to platform in that way. I think we will do that. I think Calafiori's squeezing, Marino's ability to go, you know, in behind and so on and so forth. Maybe Rice sort of, I think, adapting to that sort of left 8 role as well, which I think we could maybe have a conversation about that at some point. But yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. I think he's never going to be the sort of the winger of our dreams in that sense, in terms of creating separation and beating someone 1v1. But if we can get him inside, it's a different type of winger. You know, maybe that's the way that we need to do it this season. So yeah, we'll see. We'll have a look at Martinelli, of course, over the course of the season. Let's move forward from the game then, he says, 45 minutes into the podcast. And sort of talk about pre-season overall, because obviously we've got the Wolves game on Saturday, Premier League returns, which is very exciting. And sort of overall feelings, I know we just sort of touched on it a little bit, but for me, a really, really positive preseason in the sense of, what do you want from a preseason? You want to rediscover assets, which is what we've done. You want to see the new kits, which is what we've done, and the third kit looks very, very nice. You want to get your players up to fitness. And I think, you know, in terms of with the limitations that we have with Rice and Saka and so on, I think we're beginning to see that. I think Saka looked a little bit sharper than he did in the Leverkusen game. I think Rice looks a little bit sharper, and obviously, you know, they both went off, but I think, you know, there's a road back there. And I think the players and the assets that are going to get us through this early season, in the Martin Odegaards and the Jesuses and stuff, and Kai Havertz and so on, and Ben White, all look really, really positive. I think we played some really, really good football. Feels like we sort of built up to it. Feels like the atmosphere is good. Yeah, Bhavs, I mean, as a pre-season, I struggle, apart from maybe the result against Liverpool, to pick holes.
Honestly, very exciting pre-season, because you learnt so much in terms of the few little tweaks Mikel's put in as well. You know, we talk about Zinchenko playing a little deeper at times, and the build-up phase, and also how he uses certain other players. We've learnt so much, and we've you know, even seen the youngsters deep into pre-season, Miles and Ethan get chances and play a part of the first team. If you'd asked an Arsenal fan before pre-season, what would you have wanted? I think he's given us everything, rotations, the squad players have come into the games, so the key players have been phased in correctly, not straight into the team straight away, even though Saka started, to be fair. He is a bit insane at times. But yeah, apart from that, everything else has been perfect. And even that defeat against Liverpool, you can learn from that game and you can use it to sharpen yourself up. And it's the use of the squad that's impressed me the most. And it's the one that I'm expecting to see a lot this season as well. It's a lot of things Arsenal fans used to ask for is rotations. I think Mikel now trusts certain other players a lot more because they now know his tactics better as well. And they understand how he wants to play. And that's why I think, for my thoughts of pre-season, I think it was perfect. I couldn't ask for a much better one.
George, maybe the only thing we could have asked for, because we can always ask for more, we're Arsenal fans, is possibly, although accepting, yes, caveat that, Euros and Copa America and so on, is maybe the integration of signings a little bit sooner. What is going on with Merino? Why is it taking so long? There's loads of rumours out there about Merino.
When's it going to end, Robbie?
When's it going to end, Robbie? It had been raining. It was raining for both teams. What do we get the sense of what's going on with Merino? Because the rumours at the moment is that Arsenal still haven't made a formal proposal.
Do you believe
think the forward, well, we can come on to that in just a sec. The forward signing, I think, is a conversation that maybe we can have in just a second, and the finances and what happens with Eddie and so on and so forth. What do we think is holding this up? Do we think it's simply the payment structure? Do we think is it a smokescreen? Where do we think this is at?
I don't think it's a smokescreen. No, I don't think it's a smokescreen. I feel like what's happening right now is just trying to get a verbal agreement first. It's not just make offer, and see if one gets accepted. You make the agreement first. You get a gist of what's actually going to work, and then you go make the deal happen. And we saw it with Calafiori. It looks so simple. But when I hear deals at advanced stages and I hear payment structure, I'm going, this deal is basically done. And unless Sociedad take it all back and they go, look, we're letting Zubimendi go as well, we can't let both go, which is, it's a possible case, of course, then I'd be a bit more concerned. But I think this deal is all but getting done. We've seen some reporters that are very reliable say it's basically getting done next week. And I think also just trying to get the best price tag possible and not end up spending 30 million euros and maybe more 25, 20 range. And if that's the case, I think that's a very, very good deal. So I'm not worried, especially because the personal terms are agreed. The player wants to move as well, as Fabrizio would say. The player would love to work under Mikel Arteta. The only thing I'd say is Zubimendi's thing. I want to see how that plays out because, look, they're losing two integral parts of their midfield. Zubimendi and Moreno in the same window. Something's going to have to play out. And I hope we can get the Moreno deal done as soon as possible. Just I don't want to see no drama involved in that. Because as we saw yesterday with the Chelsea and Almadiran, anything's possible. You could get here we go and it can be gone after that.
Guys, I'm trying with Moreno. I really am trying. George, are we getting finessed in the market? What's going on?
Look, I think that...
Where's the barbecue?
Okay, I think if we're going to talk forward, we can have a conversation about being finessed.
Let's do that in a second. Let's have Marino first.
If we're talking midfield and Marino and everything...
Thank you.
You're welcome. I look, Calafiori was rumored or at least demanded to have a £42 million base clause from Bologna for time. I mean, and the whole thing that was supposedly holding up was potentially these different right percentages. But really, let's talk facts. Bologna wanted £42 million and Arsenal managed to make that the total package with a £38 million base fee. I think that Real Sociedad want a £25 million minimum for Mikel Merino, and I think Arsenal value him at that in total. So we're looking to maybe make a base fee around 20 million or 22 million pounds, and we'll make up the rest in add-ons. And I think that's where it's at, where, okay, we've all agreed he's worth 25 million pounds, but how's that structure? Are you going to give it to me up front in the base? Add potential add-ons to make it a little bit more, or are you going to agree to like what we're working towards? I just think that Arsenal see a player that has consistently rejected new contracts. They're forced to sell. We have a good relationship with them, so we're willing to talk. And it's a player that I think we've done all the legwork for, and I do think within 48 hours we're going to sit here on the podcast saying we did it. It was inevitable. Yep. It's just Arsenal finalizing a transfer taking long. Oh my God, shock. When has that happened before? I mean, like, it's our history.
But it is the history.
We've never had a deal done quick.
No, but I also think this is kind of...
Vieira was the only one.
No, but that was because it was the rumours for that. If we had rumours prior to that, you would have had weeks of that as well. Every transfer drags out, but it's not dragging out. It's just trying to get the best deal possible. We're not talking about £10 involved here. It's 10 plus 20, 30 million pounds. It's not easy to just get it done.
Yeah, it's multi-million pound deals, which is, it takes a long time. There's a lot of interested parties and so on, and it needs to be signed off. I think when we signed Calafiori as well, Mikel said that we've been tracking him for over a year. It's like define when a transfer even starts. Does it start when the interest starts, or you make contact or whatever? So these things take a long time. I also, for me, to get off my my joking, ironic fence, I think this is Arsenal, the sign of a top club. We're not going to be taken to the cleaners over payment structures. We're not going to be taken to the cleaners over fee. We're not going to be taken to the cleaners over wages. We are showing that sign of strength. And the price you have to pay is that deals will take a little bit longer. I think probably within the next couple of years, we're going to start seeing those kind of June 1st type deals. But by the way, that won't be because we start negotiating on 30th of May. It's because we'll start negotiating earlier and we can move. We've got that sort of position of strength and we don't need to be hand tied by the market as much. But I think this, for me, it's a sign of Arsenal being in the driver's seat and saying, look, we don't need to overpay. We didn't need to overpay for Calafiori. We don't need to overpay for Marino. We won't have to overpay for hopefully any players anytime soon unless we absolutely have to. So I only see it as a good thing, and I agree with you, George. I think that will sort of come. It's also a position of strength in the sense that, look, if Marino comes in on deadline day, I don't think Marino helps us beat Wolves, right? I also don't think Marino without Marino, we can't win the first 3 games or whatever it is before the end of the window. Marino helps us win the title. Marino is a floor raiser, someone who can help us in many, many different ways, someone who can rotate in and out, someone who can be, a fantastic squad player and, make so many appearances for us. But we're not signing a cog of the team. So why do we need to rush? And I know fans, we want that rush, right? We want the sort of the transfer in and whatever. But we don't need to, and this, to me, it's the sign of a top club to sort of stand our ground. If that's what we're doing, of course, we're basing on reports and stuff. I
think always think, look, if you need to make a lot of signings every summer, there's something wrong at the club, and we don't. We've made a few signings, and we only need a few signings as well. And so I think a lot of fans probably do believe Marino gets done. I think a lot of fans then think about a forward, and I'm actually intrigued to see what happens at Nketiah now, because these rumours from Marseille are just so bipolar. 1 minute Nketiah is a priority, no offer comes in. Next minute, they want to go for Wahi. Back for Nketiah, back for Wahi. I don't know what's happening there. But if Nketiah goes, with Smith Rowe gone as well, then I think our forward's guaranteed as well.
Agree, George?
Should be. I mean, part of the problem is I've had many an argument, shock, like on what to expect. I know. Me. But I don't know. Instead of answering the question, I want to throw it back to you guys. Like, what is acceptable? Because I mean, like, let's assume Marino and Calafiori are done. And, right, how do you contextualize what Arsenal have maximized in terms of their ability right now? Because I don't want to hear, I'm not hearing links and I'm not hearing Mikel giving me a clear plan, because I've repeated this on so many podcasts. The club have told the market and have told Arsenal fans, we lack X factor, we lack moments, and we lack a box efficiency. I'm using club words from Mikel and the club. So this is not me and my opinion, even though I agree completely with it. But this is the club saying that we lack this. Okay? That is not £25 million, guys. When you describe a forward that is capable of X factor, that is capable of moments and a level of box efficiency, we're not even talking £50 million, guys. We are talking a marquee option. Doesn't have to be center forward. Could be left wing, right wing, attacking midfielder. I don't care what you want to position you want to do it. But those phrases, that specific terminology, is an expensive, surefire signing. So when I'm hearing it from the club, and I'm hearing it from club officials in terms of the Athletic, that's being aligned with Mikel Arteta, who's repeating the same moment, I am seeing an alignment in thought. I'm not seeing two people at eds. So from that point, if I don't see somebody that comes in to address something that they've clearly identified as a problem, I'm going to say that we haven't done everything we set out to do. And that's not me thinking that no longer Arsenal are going to be able to compete and none of that. But mate, when I'm coming into this summer and I took the temperature not just to quote you, because you weren't the only one, Alex, but you were sitting there saying like you believe that we had the potential to spend the most we've ever done in this transfer window. Mm-hmm. You weren't alone. Every single person, and me included, by the way, I don't know if it was the most we've ever done, but I sat there saying 200 million pounds minimum. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, Bhavs, but I don't know, entering the transfer window, okay, we're here where we're at right now. But everybody came into the window saying, okay, Arsenal have got the most commercial revenue that they've ever got. They've just come off the back of very new Adidas and Emirates sponsorships that have given them 75 million pounds in July alone. They've come off their most successful season from a sporting perspective. The Champions League money has given us the most money that we've ever had in terms of TV revenue. From a financial position, if you analyze the books from Swiss Ramble, from financial experts that are much smarter than me, Arsenal have clear headroom from a wage perspective. We are not waiting on non-homegrown foreign player spots to open. We have open spots. We are not having an issue with homegrown players. There is no issue in terms of us being financially unable to complete this signing.
Yep.
Whether we do or we don't, that's a debate, but that's my frustration. So if you have the capability, for me, you should try. I can accept
give
not
some
doing
specific numbers as well, if you want. So Magic Cat, who does lots of really, really great threads on PSR and so on, has done a thread. I probably won't be able to read all of this, but if you want to go read the whole thing, he's called @themagic_top hat on X. So he estimates that Arsenal's rolling average annual profit on disposal of player registrations will be around £60 million based on prize sales and projected sales over time. Basically, it gives a baseline income for squad cost control of £650 million. Assuming Arsenal will target a maximum ratio of 70% to stay in line with UEFA's financial controls from season 25-26, not 24-25 by the way, that would permit Arsenal a maximum annual football expense of £455 million per annum. He does a bit of calculations, and then he says this leaves £55 million per annum maximum remaining capacity to remain compliant. For context, that's the equivalent of £150 million in transfer fees plus £350,000 per week in wages pre-sales. If Arsenal can sell Nketiah, Nelson, Ramsdale, Tierney, so on and so on, that obviously frees up more. So we've all, even if you disagree with the logic before, there's obviously money to spend. I also, and Baz, before we come to you, I want to echo what George said as well, and just repeat my point, which is, I think some people are like, well, we can't improve, we can't do the signing that's going to be here for the next 5 years, so let's not bother. And I don't get that at all. If you can only improve a little bit, then only improve a little bit. And let's be clear, I think the club will do it. But I also, I think it's worth looking back to the beginning of the window and going, look, we all came into this window wanting something. We haven't yet got it. I get the sense that the club will go and do that. And hopefully that will happen fairly soon.
Yeah. I think if we want a big term centre forward, I don't see it happening at this part of the window. I don't see a signing of Osimhen, in my eyes at least, unless I've seen something really happen behind the scenes. I also big deals kind of get done early in the window. We very rarely leave big deals right towards the end of the window. The only one I can think of is Thomas Partey, maybe.
But maybe we will now.
And
maybe
we will.
This is a way of reducing the cost.
It could be, and I'm not in behind the boardrooms to know exactly what's happening. But in my eyes, I feel like maybe Mikel has another player in mind, maybe, because in Victor Osimhen's case, I think the only reason I could see Arsenal not making a move is they know something behind the scenes about the player's character and personnel, and that's about it. And we know how massive that is for Mikel Arteta. We talked about how Calafiori and how Moreno could come in and how all these new players coming into our team and how they are personalities, not just on the pitch but behind the scenes as well. And if they've known something, then I could see them staying away from that. And if Alexander Isak's the player they want, and he's not available.
So beyond the name though, right? Because this is my only pushback, right? Because now we're just repeating links. But if you had, Victor Osimhen's not the only player in the world. Okay, it doesn't have to be him. Okay, he is. But like here, Victor Gyökeres, for example, I don't love everything about him, but that deal represents marquee money. I wouldn't be upset at the club attempting, saying, okay, the player that I wanted didn't do it. I'm going to move for a player that may not give me everything, but will solve an aspect. If I said box efficiency was a problem, Victor Gyökeres, for as much as maybe I have critiques, solves that problem. So it's about, for me, it's not about the name. And I don't want to get caught up in, I'm not seeing X link, therefore I don't think the club are going to do it. What I'm annoyed at is if the club tells me there's a problem and there's something lacking, and I don't see them go to do that in the market, then I see an issue in terms of execution. So it doesn't have to be the name. It could be Sesko. You could give me Pedro Neto, Nico Williams. I don't care. As long as the clubs say, I believe this player solves the problem that I have been saying for the last 6 months, because this isn't a problem that for me has existed in this transfer window. We have been talking about X Factor and moments since even before Bayern, but it got highlighted in Bayern. So if you're talking about taking the next step, and that's the goal. So this is where I guess for me, I get a little bit annoyed with the club. Personally, I only speak on me. If they're telling me all these problems and I don't see an attempt to fix it, that's where I would probably feel that we didn't do the best that we could. And we didn't maximize ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree.
No,
and
no,
by the way,
I
think there's some people who still might push back against that. And I would say, okay, fine. Disagree with everything we say. Absolutely fine. Explain the Mudryk deal. If the club don't want that, explain the Mudryk deal. Explain the Šeško deal. Explain the Isak talks. Explain the Vlahovic links. Like, we're clearly looking for something.
Do you think Mikel has a Rice level target as a striker? And if so, who do you think that player is? Because I feel like that might be the case. Like a player he believes is so perfect that he has to wait for the opportunity to become available rather than go and make moves for plan Bs. But if that's not the case, and I'd like to hear why.
Personally, I don't think he does, because I think if that was the case, then I think we wouldn't have seen the move for Šeško. But again, that doesn't, just because there isn't the perfect player future of the position doesn't mean you shouldn't go and improve. It's such a weird ideology that, okay, well, this player's got problems, so just don't bother. It's like there's something called coaching. There's something called development. There's something called, asset management.
If you look at our signings so far this window and the amount we spent on those players, it's very sensible. So if we talk about Victor Gyökeres as an example, and Sporting are persistent of 80, 90 million pounds and also don't see he's worth that, they're not going to pay that. You look at Šeško as the only player, but he was available for a release clause. That was why we went for him. It was an opportunity. Victor Osimhen is the only player right now that's actually a market opportunity. The rest of the players are players that are at their clubs on the long-term contracts that you have to go and make available. And if Arsenal can't do it sensibly, I don't think they are going to do it this window. I don't think they're going to go above and beyond for players, especially if they're not convinced about him. If it's a player they're convinced about and he's their number one target, I think they'll go above and beyond for that. So look, I'll be surprised to hear if we hear anything massive behind the scenes, but I do think we're going to sign a forward. I don't think it'll be a blockbuster centre forward, but we'll sign a forward.
But this is kind of my point. It doesn't have to be blockbuster. It can be, it's basically if we're selling Eddie
we
Nketiah.
Are though demanding
can we
that
improve
as a
on
fan
Nketiah?
base.
I
hear that, but
I think
Gyökeres or Osimhen or the names are putting forwards in my eyes are blockbuster deals because they're massive. They're above 50, 60 million pounds. It'll be our most expensive signing. We're not asking for a 20 million.
To be fair, though, here I'll counter. To be fair, Bhavs, we are because the club has asked for it. Like,
of course they have.
Because if the club is telling, we all have our. As a fan, we will want the best. A fan will always give you the best, shiniest name. So ignore what the fan is. But if the club is telling me I want an X factor player with box efficiency, that doesn't scream sensible 50 million pound forward that will get us through the line in a couple positions. That screams I want a sensible marquee forward. So if you're telling the fan, like that's the goal of you looking to fix moving forward, then you have to follow through. Otherwise, fans are going to say, well, okay, like, what did you feel that we needed? If you felt that versatile attacker was the only thing that you needed, then the framing would be, we have scored a brilliant amount of goals. What we need is a different option. We lack a certain type of player. But that's not what we're seeing because it hasn't been a squad issue. What we've seen is a team that has nearly been there, but needs something to give us a guarantee in moments. And people aren't asking for a 30 goal a season striker. They're asking for one chance goal. And that is one of the most expensive things to solve on the market. Whether you're Heung-min Son, and I'll use him very specifically as one of the best 1v1 wingers I've seen in the Premier League, whether you're Salah, whether you're Mane, whether I can list you a ton of other wingers. It doesn't have to be a striker. I guess my point is, if the club is telling you this is a gap and they don't address it, then on reflection of the window, you're going to say, okay, they didn't meet that expectation. And it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world, but you're going to say you did fail in delivering what you set out at the beginning of the window to do. So how do you evolve from that? And the best way that I can summarize this point, I feel that with Calafiori and Marino alone, on that summer, there is a chance Arsenal win the Premier League. Now, I'm going to repeat that. There is a chance that Arsenal win the Premier League. If I'm talking about adding a forward, that gives me box efficiency, my statement is Arsenal will win the Premier League in 2024-25. That is the difference. And making that gap up, what is the price of that? Whether you believe a player is worth 85, 100, 120 million pounds, what is the price going into a season saying you will win something, whether or not you can win something? Now, for some people, that is going to be 50 million pounds. For other people, it's going to be 10. For some people, it'll be 100 million pounds. My point is, I want somebody to attack the situation, in Fabrizio Romano's words, with the intent to change that phrase with as much confidence that they can. That's the best way I can put it. And it doesn't have to be a player I like. It could be a player I've never heard of. It doesn't have to be that. It could be a El Wahey 2.0 from Bermuda
if you ask,
we suddenly find. But as long as there's the intent and they execute and they present their plan, I'm willing to hear it. But I haven't seen it.
No, I understand. And look, if you ask Arsenal fans at the start of the window, do you want Calafiori and Moreno? Many would have known about them as a signing. So there's a very good chance also can pull someone out of nowhere. I just don't know about the centre forward just yet. But hey, if Eddie goes, there is a space there. There's finances there to go make a deal happen. And there's definitely negotiations happening anyways. I'm sure there's a lot of players that Arsenal negotiated for that we don't hear from until years after. So there's definitely players out there. And we've still got time in the window as well. Yeah. And obviously, the later you get to the window as well, and you get to that stage, there's opportunities. Players force moves away. Things, negotiations get a bit more heated. So there's a chance that Arsenal could sign a striker. We'll see how marquee that is, though.
Let's put it this way, Bhavs. If there's Kingsley Coman's on the market for a loan with an option or obligation to buy, and you're sitting there saying that you have zero funds, I'm going to be very upset if the reason is a lack of funds when I know that not to be the case, and you don't try. Like, that's a player that's not perfect. He is incredibly injury ridden. It doesn't make sense on many levels, but there is something that he offers a world-class ability as a winger. Both sides of the pitch. He gives you a level of transition inevitability. There are things that he does that he solves, at least the phrase that you came into the summer with, where while he's not my first choice, he's not someone I would love, and it's not even somebody that I think that we should even commit to a long-term basis. But at least there's a semblance of, okay, I can understand why you went to it. If I go into the summer and I see, I don't know, we'll just throw out Somerville, or we keep Reece Nelson, and the forward that we buy is a 25 to 30 million pounds prospect, I'm going to say, I wish him the best. I hope that it's going to be great. It doesn't change my phrase of, can Arsenal win the league, to Arsenal will win the league. And that is something that I wanted solved this summer. I wanted to take that next step. And I just don't know if we've done our best to achieve that.
Yeah, and I think basically the subjective, does it change that phrase from can to will, is a subjective answer
for sure.
But I will keep coming back to it, that just because you can't answer that question doesn't mean you shouldn't improve at all in the point. Basically, the question is, can we improve on Eddie or Reece this summer? And if you genuinely answer no, then fair enough. But I get your eyes tested. There's players out there. Anyway, we've gone over, so we've got to finish there. But let's move forward to what we've got. An instant reaction coming on Saturday. George and I will probably be doing some kind of rewatch or scouting at some point this week. Babs, you're back with your Friday show, or
Friday,
are you?
Friday.
Is this the wedding weekend?
Wedding weekend, but the wedding's early in the day, so I should be sober enough by that time.
Good stuff. We're drunk Bhavs on the stream.
Hopefully.
Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure you give us a review of the podcast as well on Apple. I don't think we have any reviews on Apple, so you're slacking. Go give us a review,
please.
There,
like
or,
we not just
nice one. maybe just call yourself Mikel Moreno, and then George will notice you.
Moreno.
It was a good left back for Liverpool. We'll finish there. Thanks, chaps. Pleasure as always.
Peace. Oh
no, that was just
that's not the outro.
No, but as in, you were going to say, "Oh, cheers, thanks everyone," and then I'll say, "Thanks for watching, thanks for keeping Arsenal." Thanks, chaps,
and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
No. I was going to say, right, we'll do it again.
Oh, okay.
I say thanks, chaps. You say whatever you want to say, and then I say, and thanks.
That's
for
what I was trying to do, but he said thanks for keeping Arsenal.
Thanks, chaps.
Thanks, chaps.
No worries. Thank you.
And thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Peace.
Professionals.